All right, let's take a look at your WebEx Meeting Center account that's included with your subscription to ICO here. Before we start, I wanted to mention that WebEx has been rapidly improving and adding new features to Meeting Center. This presentation was prepared in December 2020 for release in January 2021. When the meeting is joined, the participant is first taken to a setup screen. Here, you can select your audio option as either computer audio or phone audio. If you switch to phone, you will dial in from inside the meeting. As the host, you are able to select whether you would like to join muted or off mute. If connecting via computer audio, you can click the drop-down arrow to the right of the mute and unmute button and see all the speakers and microphones that WebEx detects on your computer. You can then click Settings to see these in a drop-down format. The Settings area helps you test your speaker and microphone. And then you can also see additional options. These include: have WebEx automatically adjust your volume that it detects from your mic. Have WebEx remove background noise automatically that it doesn't detect to be voice or something that you wanted to pass through. If your device has a mute button, you can make it so that it also mutes in WebEx. This is often a very helpful feature as you wouldn't want to accidentally double mute yourself. Music mode is a feature designed to better capture instrumentals played into your mic. By default, music mode is off, which increases vocal quality. One last thing you can set up before entering the session is whether or not your webcam will start automatically on entering, and you can also set which webcam WebEx will use if it detects more than one by clicking the drop-down arrow to the right of Start Video. Let's select to connect via phone to find out what WebEx shows us, and then click to start the meeting. The prompt for call-in displays a phone number, access code, and attendee ID. While the attendee ID is not necessary to connect to audio, it is necessary to pair it to your login for the session. Otherwise, your name will show up in the session without audio, and a random call-in user will display below. At the top, WebEx also offers the flexibility to connect from a compatible phone app such as Cisco Jabber or Skype. Let's switch back to computer audio, which pairs everything for us. Once connected, we will have an audio device next to our name, denoting the kind of audio we've connected with. This is a useful feature to know about, as it can help you determine who is fully connected to your session. Keep in mind that occasionally people who connect via phone will mistype their attendee ID, and therefore look like they have no audio. You can look down and see are there any call-in users, and this can help you figure out that they're actually still listening. While it's not a big deal for attendees to be call-in users, it's helpful and important that the presenters have their audio connected properly. Now that we're in the session, let's set up attendee privileges. Before we do that, I wanted to mention briefly that we are currently using WebEx Meeting Center on a PC. The Mac interface looks different, and some of the options might be in different locations. To get started with attendee privileges, let's choose Participant at the top left menu. The first thing you will usually want to set is attendee mute and unmute privileges. This can be done by either choosing Mute All to mute all of the attendees, which then gives you a prompt to set whether the attendees can unmute themselves, or simply using Mute on Entry. The option to allow attendees to mute and unmute themselves is available here, below the Mute on Entry setting. Note that hosts and co-hosts can always unmute or remute attendees. So if you'd like to have an interactive session, but be in control of the flow, you can have attendees raise their hands and then unmute them. We'll take a look at that a little later. The option Anyone Can Share enables attendees to request to become the presenter and also upload their own files. You might want to turn that off for non-team meetings and promote people to being the presenters as you see fit. You can also specify a few co-hosts will have the privilege to request this without everyone having it. Assign privileges takes you to the general permissions screen for those who are not the host, presenter, or co-host. The first tab is Communicate, which allows you to control who the attendees are allowed to chat to. If you turn off Everyone, then the host, presenter, and co-host will be able to chat with everyone, but the attendees will be restricted to the selections you make here. Contact operator privately seems to be a very uncommon feature, and so we have not activated it in the iCohere WebEx accounts. Let's switch over to the Participants tab. Print, save, and annotate refer to files uploaded into the session. Normally these are off for attendees, but sometimes you might enjoy an interactive session where you let the attendees annotate on special slides you put up. View allows you to make the participant list private by unchecking the box. It also controls whether attendees can move through media you've uploaded. Let's talk about these. Any document would allow attendees to cycle through different PowerPoint decks, PDFs, Excel files, and videos you've added to the session. Thumbnails would allow attendees to open the thumbnail view, which shows them the full complement of slides or pages in a document. Any page lets the attendees move through the document on their own. When the presenter makes a transition to a new page, slide, or switches documents, everyone is returned to the presenter slide, but then they can click ahead. So normally these settings are turned off for webinars, but you might like them on during an open team meeting for people to collaborate on specific items without waiting to be shown them. For instance, you may not have a presenter that's actually presenting materials. You may just be working with your colleagues on something. Under Meeting, anyone can share would allow attendees to upload their own files. If the Anyone Can Share option was active that we looked at before on the participant dropdown, this option would be locked in. Control Shared Applications allows attendees to be able to collaborate with the presenter if given permission and share their mouse during a screen share. As you can imagine, this is usually not used. Instead, you would let a co-host or the host collaborate with the presenter, but not an attendee. Again, this may be different for a team meeting than a webinar. Now that you've set up the attendee privileges, it's a good idea to double check that the settings you wanted are all selected. Once you've done that, you can go over to Meeting and then Options to set up some general options that pertain to all participants, including the host. Turning off allowing all participants to send their video disables the webcam feature from your session entirely. This is the same as in WebEx Training Center, except that in WebEx Training Center you can disable it only for attendees. I suspect this is coming soon for Meeting Center. If it does, the option to not allow attendee webcams will likely be added to the Assign Privileges area, which pertains just to the attendees and not to like the host or the co-hosts. However, one thing you can do in Meeting Center is you can right-click on an attendee and stop their video. So if you wanted to individually stop an attendee video, you are able to do that. However, this setting has to be turned on, otherwise all webcam videos are disabled for the session. Turning off chat disables chat for everyone in the session. Turning off notes would stop people from being able to take notes via the notes option on the side. Reactions would disable the new animated reaction emoticons. File transfer stops the ability for the host, presenter, and co-host to share direct downloads of files during the session. In my experience, file transfer is rarely used, and you can leave it on or turn it off as you like. You probably just won't make use of it. An easier way to send a file is to chat out a link to a direct download, such as from your server or through Dropbox. Enable UCF Rich Media for attendees is a feature that enables things to display better that are uploaded and possibly even retain animations and effects. Enable Closed Caption is a relatively newer feature at the time of this video. If you select it, you can assign a captioner who can use a special caption box to chat out captions during the session for participants to view. The next tab is for content sharing. Currently, the only option here is whether you use the old version of Screen Share that makes the WebEx window disappear. Other items brought up that aren't being shared can sometimes lead to ambiguous boxes in front of your screen share. The newer screen share is a lot cleaner as it displays in the presentation area of the session, while it is still open and participants can make it larger if they like. So we don't recommend checking this and using the new version instead. The Import Mode section relates primarily to PowerPoint files loaded into the session. If the UCF, which stands for Universal Communications Format, is checked, there is a chance that animations and transition effects will be retained for your slides. Sometimes the reason these don't display has to do with the version of PowerPoint you have installed, not necessarily the version of PowerPoint that made the file. We found that older versions of Office, such as 2010, work better than more recent versions. If you're having trouble loading in files, you might try switching to Print Driver. This will usually always work, but there will be no animations and the slides might come in a different size. An alternative is to screen share your slides. It's just a good idea to do some testing to confirm you are good with the way the recording looks when performing a screen share of slides. Screen sharing will retain animations. One thing that's different about the way WebEx operates than some of the other meeting platforms is that WebEx allows you to actually load things into the session. And so it's nice to see if you can take advantage of that for a better recording. Now that we've set things up, let's add a few more people to the session. We've added 2 more people. One is connected via the dial-in number and one is connected via the mobile app on a phone or tablet as denoted by the smartphone icon. I'm going to go ahead and switch Natalie from a phone to computer audio. And you'll see the icon changes. Now that we have them in the session, you can right-click on them to set their role. As the host, you have the highest form of privilege and can set up the session and start the cloud recording. The ball denotes the active presenter. There are some settings that can only be changed when you have the ball, but being the host, you can take the ball back at any time. A presenter can pass the ball, but not take it back unless you make them a co-host. You can also assign a note taker and captioner from the roles area. In this case, note taker is grayed out because everyone can currently take notes in the session, but you might have noticed that in the meeting and option area, you could set up a single notes taker, and with that, you can assign the person to be the note taker. The same thing goes with make closed captionist. You have to have closed captioning enabled. When right-clicking, there are some other useful features including lowering an individual hand or all hands. This is especially useful if you set the session up to restrict attendees from unmuting themselves. When attendees raise their hand by using the hand raise icon, it will display a number inside of the hand to denote the order they raised them in. Then you can always lower the hand as you ask them. You can also stop the video of the participant and quickly select to send a private message to them by right-clicking on their name and clicking Chat at the bottom. Now let's take a look at uploading content to the session. You can choose the Share drop-down at the top left menu or at the bottom of the page to get started. While the host and co-host can share files and whiteboards, only the active presenter can share their screen. Scrolling down, you can upload a file or blank whiteboard. If you select to upload a file, it will load into the session and be able to be moved through it if it has multiple pages or slides. The other items you see listed on this page are applications that are currently open on the computer or just available for quick open, and they would just immediately go into a screen share to show them. Let's add a PowerPoint, a PDF, and a video. Once you've added them, you'll find a toolbar on the left-hand side where you can cycle through the pages and do a few other things, such as opening the thumbnail view and annotating. You can also open the thumbnail view from the top View drop-down. You can open the Thumbnails view by choosing View and then Show Thumbnails. This will give you as the presenter an easy way of moving through them. It does not reveal the thumbnails to the attendees. Click on a slide or page to highlight it, and then you can use your up and down arrow keys on your keyboard to move through it instead of clicking on the side. With PDFs, we've noticed that they can create some confusion in this session, as unlike slides that load in statically seeing the whole page, they require scrolling because they don't show the whole page at once, and so attendees might need to scroll through them to keep up with you. To make the pages advance automatically, you can choose View and then Automatically Advance Pages. Then set the duration between slides and click Start. The slides will cycle through automatically, and this creates a nice touch prior to the meeting being started. You might even put up some helpful tech info. In the case of videos, please note that they are streamed from the presenter's computer, and if you change the presenter by passing the ball, the video will disappear. We recommend streaming videos from a strong internet connection, plugged in if possible instead of wireless, and make sure the files aren't too large. It is also a good idea that they are in MP4 format, which has become a universal standard for videos. Currently, streaming videos via YouTube or another streaming provider does not work very well. When you load a video, you can play it out to the attendees. If you click to make it full screen, it will make it full screen for the attendees as well. A couple important notes on video or audio streaming. The attendees will likely be about 3 to 5 seconds behind you, so be sure to wait a few seconds at the end to ensure they got to enjoy the whole thing. The audio from a video or audio-only file streams through the attendee's device and not through the dial-in calling. It is important to remind those that called in on a phone to have their speakers turned up. If they're using the mobile app, it will stream through their tablet or mobile device. You can move through content by clicking on the drop-down at the top. You can also rename different things you've loaded in case you want to organize them, such as putting a number in front of each one. One more setting you might enjoy looking at is the dark and light themes. Under the View drop-down, you can go to the bottom where it says Themes, and change it if you'd like to have a dark theme versus a light theme. Before we look at polling, let's look at setting a virtual background. At the bottom where you see Start Video, you can click the drop-down to the right, and then choose Virtual Background. You can choose from some presets, or upload your own. We found that you can upload 3 different virtual backdrops and then reuse them, and you can always remove one if you want to upload a new one. Let's check out polling next. By default, the polling panel is hidden and needs to be activated. To activate it, choose View and then Panels. You can then choose Manage Panels, and you will be able to activate it from here. You might have noticed the Multimedia Viewer option, which would allow you to load websites for people to interact with individually. But it forces them to be a small panel on the bottom right, and we have found it to be very awkward and confusing for attendees, but you can try it out and see if it would work well for you. Once polling is added to your panels, you can open and close it from the side options and then set up your polls as the presenter. You can have more than one question on a poll. Currently, we found WebEx Meeting Center only allows one poll loaded at a time, but with polls you can always create them ahead of time and save them, and then upload a different one after the first one concludes, so no need to set them up on the fly. Once you've created your questions, you can set the poll duration and then open it as the presenter. You can also save your poll to open it in a future session. Now let's go ahead and click to open this poll. You can then see the total number of people who have not taken the poll, who are currently taking the poll, and who have completed the poll. Note that you can close the poll at any time, but that if someone is currently taking it, your screen will lock for 20 seconds, giving them time to finish. It's good to be aware that this can happen. Here's an example. Once the poll is finished, you can always choose to share the results with everyone else in the session. This will not share the attendee names, but instead the aggregate percentage. Once your poll is finished, you can save the question and then the result as an Excel file. Now let's discuss recording the session. The host is the one with the privilege to record. The recording follows the active presenter's actions in the screen. So if the host was not the presenter and they clicked ahead on the slide deck, it wouldn't be following their view. The recording will create an MP4 of your session. There are 2 kinds of MP4s that can be created. If your session has no content shared during the session or screen sharing done, the recording will be a webcam-focused recording. If you share content, even just briefly, and then remove it, the recording will be a content-focused recording, giving more space for the presented materials and smaller webcams. We recommend simply experimenting with these options to find out which one will work better for the different sessions you give. Let's take a moment to look at setting up breakouts. To create breakout assignments, choose Breakout Sessions at the top menu. Once you enable breakout sessions, you can determine if they will be automatically or manually assigned. Let's manually assign them and then create a number of rooms. You will notice that we have 3 people in the session, but only the 2 on computer are available to be added to the breakouts. At this time, those joining from the mobile app, either on their tablet or mobile device, cannot join breakouts. However, we read online that this feature is in beta, and so we expect it to be coming relatively soon. Once you assign people to the breakouts, you can open them, and as the host, jump between the rooms to check out how things are going. Since breakouts are an advanced feature, we encourage you to try them out, and then contact us if you have any specific questions about strategy or application. We're almost finished, but here are a few last features. When the host closes the meeting, it closes for everyone. If the host accidentally disconnects from the meeting, say for losing internet, WebEx is smart enough to know it wasn't intentional and pass the host role over to someone else. The recording will still be going, and you can log back in and reclaim the host role by choosing Participant and then Reclaim Host Role at the bottom. Expel, located below Reclaim Host Role, can be used to expel an attendee from the meeting. You can also right-click on the attendee and choose Expel. The new reactive emoticons are fun and can be used to enhance your session. Attendees can use them throughout to give feedback to the speaker as they present. At the top right, there's a layout option. You can use this to change the style of the layout. There are different modes depending on whether or not you have content in the session, or just webcams. One shout out is to Stage. Stage is a newer feature that WebEx has been implementing. We're not sure if all the features are here yet, but we saw a video and it looks like it's going to be one of the best ones, allowing you to have very high flexibility for laying out the different things that are in the session. Well, that's it for our overview of WebEx Meeting Center. We hope it was helpful and that you enjoy running your meetings.